When the gay-men's smile on the screened town of Willow Creek had always worn its charm, like a badge of honor, with its tree-lined streets, picket fences, and local hardware stores where clerks still remembered your name. It was the kind of place that existed more in Norman Rockwell paintings than in real life. But behind that pristine facade, shadows sometimes crept where no one expected. In March 2022, that shadow would come from the least likely of places, a beloved local family who had once shone on national television. Jack and Lena Ramsey were local celebrities of a kind. Jack was a former high school football star turned insurance agent. Lena was a pediatric nurse known for her empathy and tireless work ethic. They had 3 children, a golden retriever named Waffles, and a 2-story colonial house on Sycamore Lane that looked like it was plucked straight from a catalog. If Willow Creek had royalty, it was the Ramseys. Their moment in the national spotlight came when they were chosen to appear on Family Fortune, the upbeat, laugh-a-minute game show that turned families into temporary TV stars. Friends and neighbors gathered for a viewing party at the local VFW hall, snacks in hand. Spirits high, the Ramsey family, beaming with matching blue outfits, strode onto the stage to thunderous applause. But it was Jack's answer to a seemingly innocuous question that made everyone shift uneasily. Name something a husband might say on his wedding day that he'll regret later. The host grinned. Jack chuckled, leaned forward, and said into the mic, "I love my wife, but I wish I hadn't said I do." Laughter rippled through the audience, but it was nervous, unsure. The camera panned briefly to Lena, whose smile didn't quite reach her eyes. "I'm gonna get in trouble for that, aren't I?" Jack said, with mock regret, glancing at his wife. The host laughed it off, moved on. The moment lasted seconds, but in Willow Creek, it lingered. People joked about it for weeks. Jack, still alive. Someone would ask at the grocery store, "You better sleep with one eye open." Jack would play along, brushing it off with his signature charm. But Lena, some noticed, seemed quieter, more withdrawn, less radiant. Few outside their close circle knew that the Ramsey marriage had been faltering for years. Lena had once confided to a colleague, "People think Jack is the perfect husband because he says the right things, but at home, he's someone else entirely." The truth was buried under years of control, emotional manipulation, and passive-aggressive jabs that eventually wore Lena down. Jack's charm was his weapon. In public, he was affable, funny, even generous. At home, he belittled Lena's ambitions, controlled finances, and isolated her from longtime friends. Lena's best friend, Marcy, had long been concerned. She'd change the subject every time I brought up Jack. Once, she had a bruise on her wrist, said she slipped getting out of the car. I didn't buy it. When Lena finally filed for divorce in January 2023, the town was stunned. Whispers filled the coffee shops and PTA meetings. Jack played the victim perfectly. He'd show up at school events alone, looking weary. "She blindsided me," he'd say. "I just want what's best for the kids." But behind the scenes, tensions mounted. Custody negotiations turned hostile. Lena insisted on full custody, citing Jack's unpredictable temper and emotional instability. "Jack scares me," she once told her lawyer. "He's never hit me, but sometimes I wish he would. At least then people might believe me." She documented everything. Her journals, stored in a locked drawer, detailed fights, veiled threats, financial deceit. She even emailed a copy of one particularly disturbing entry to Marcy. March 2, 2023, he said, "If I can't have you, no one will." Then he smiled and kissed my forehead like it was nothing. "I'm not crazy. I know what I heard." Jack, meanwhile, grew more erratic. He began stalking Lena's social media accounts, creating fake profiles to monitor her interactions. He even confronted a co-worker she'd met for lunch, accusing him of trying to steal his family. The police were contacted once after Jack showed up uninvited to Lena's house and refused to leave, but without physical violence. Authorities claimed their hands were tied. "It's a civil matter," the officer said. By late March, Lena changed the locks and installed a home security system. She also left a note with Marcy, "If anything happens to me, it's Jack." Promise me you'll tell the police. On April 3, 2023, Lena was scheduled to drop the kids off at Jack's place for the weekend. She never showed up. Jack texted repeatedly, "Hey, where are you? Lena, this isn't like you. We had an agreement. Are you okay?" Then he texted Marcy, "Have you heard from Lena? I'm worried." Marcy, already uneasy, drove to Lena's house. The front door was ajar. The lights were on. Inside, silence. In the bathroom, she found her friend. Lena lay face down, blood soaking through her pajama shirt. A trail of bloody footprints led to the back door, which was forced open. Marcy's screams brought the neighbors running. Police arrived. Within minutes, Lena had been shot 12 times. Casings scattered on the tile floor suggested the killer stood over her as he fired the final rounds. The community reeled. Grief collided with disbelief. Candlelight vigils were held outside Lena's workplace. Flowers lined her doorstep. But beneath the mourning, one question burned. How could this happen in Willow Creek? And more importantly, who could have done it? The answer, many feared, was already clear. The marriage-packed Willow Creek was quiet again. At least on the surface, the news vans had left. The candles outside Lena's house had melted into puddles of wax. Her children, now staying with her sister in a neighboring town, didn't yet understand the permanence of what had happened. But for Marcy and a handful of others who knew the truth about Lena and Jack, the silence felt like a ticking clock. Detective Naomi Kastel had seen her share of broken marriages and bruised facades, but something about Lena's murder gnawed at her. The violence, the precision, it didn't feel random. It felt personal. She studied Jack Ramsey's interviews, listened to his voicemails, read Lena's journal entries. Everything pointed in one direction, but there was no smoking gun. Not yet. Jack had played his part with polished skill, the grieving husband, the concerned father. He wiped away tears during the vigil, shaking hands and hugging neighbors, all while repeating the same line. Who could do something like this? Naomi didn't believe a word of it. She had Lena's journal and a trove of text messages. One in particular stood out. March 18, 2023, Marcy, if anything happens to me, show this to the police. Jack told me last night, we made a pact. Remember, we leave this world together or not at all. He scares me. I can't take this anymore. The phrase marriage pact came up again in a recorded therapy session Lena had secretly taped during a couples counseling meeting. In it, Jack says, "We said forever, didn't we? I don't believe in divorce. You leave me. You die alone." The therapist had reported the comment, but with no follow-up from Lena. It had been dropped. Now, that file was key evidence. Meanwhile, Jack continued spinning his narrative. He appeared on a local morning show, dressed in muted colors. Voice low and gravelly, "She was the love of my life," he said. I don't understand who would want to hurt her. She didn't deserve this." He clasped his hands tightly, like a man trying to hold himself together. The host nodded sympathetically. Viewers called in with prayers and condolences. But for Naomi, it was all theater. "Get me everything we have on Jack Ramsey," she told her team. "I want to go over every financial document, every digital footprint. If he planned this, we'll find it." A digital trail of darkness. Jack wasn't as careful online as he was in public. Forensic analysts uncovered a cache of deleted browser history and encrypted messages recovered from his tablet. The searches chilled even the seasoned detectives. How to disable home security cameras remotely? Do gunshot residue tests work after washing? Homemade silencer for 9mm. How long does gunpowder stay on skin? The timestamps aligned with key dates in the investigation, including the night before Lena's murder. The most damning search, however, was found on a dark web mirror site that Jack had accessed using a VPN. How much to hire someone for a clean job? No questions. It didn't prove he hired anyone, but it raised enough eyebrows to bring him under the microscope. Naomi filed for a warrant. At Jack's home, officers recovered a pair of black gloves, a duffel bag with duct tape and zip ties, and a burner phone. Hidden behind the furnace, the phone's only contact was saved under M, and it contained a single message: "It's done." The date, April 3rd, the turning point with mounting evidence. Naomi brought Jack in for questioning. "You're not under arrest," she said, "but we'd like to clarify a few things." Jack was composed. "I've already told everything. I know to the officers who came before. I have nothing to hide." Naomi slid a photo across the table. It was a still from traffic cam footage, Jack's SUV, parked a block from Lena's house the night she was killed. "That's not me," he said immediately. "I let a friend borrow my car." "What friend?" Jack paused. Matt Carson. "We spoke to Matt. He says he hasn't seen you in weeks." Jack swallowed hard. Naomi leaned in. "We know about the burner phone, the dark web search, the marriage pact. You planned this, Jack, and you thought you'd get away with it." He didn't respond. His eyes were glassy. His fingers tapped, a slow rhythm on the table. "Where did you hide the gun?" Still silence. Naomi left the room. Her team watched through the two-way mirror. "He's cracking," she said. "Give it time." Photograph of Lena radiant, smiling, had been placed beside a flickering candle at the courtroom entrance. Jack entered in an ill-fitting suit, his hair neatly combed, his face unreadable. No one greeted him. He scanned the room but found no friendly faces. The prosecutor, Assistant District Attorney Claire Mendoza, approached the bench with a confidence that matched her reputation. She was known for her meticulous casework and her ability to peel back the layers of even the most complex cases. "Your Honor," she began, "we intend to prove not only that Mr. Ramsey murdered his wife in cold blood, but that the act was calculated, premeditated, and driven by a deeply rooted desire for control." The defense attorney, Philip Crane, objected immediately. "Speculation, Your Honor." "Withdrawn." Mendoza said, "We'll let the evidence speak." And it did. The jury was shown photographs of Lena's home, the back door pried open, the blood-spattered tiles in the bathroom, the small handprint of one of Lena's children on the hallway wall. Then came the harder pieces: Lena's journal, the burner phone, Ethan's testimony. Every detail painted a portrait of a man unraveling, inch by inch. But Mendoza's most potent weapon wasn't the evidence itself, it was the story behind it. She narrated Lena's life with care and precision, emphasizing her dedication as a mother, her community work, and the silent battles she fought behind closed doors. "She warned us," Mendoza said. Pacing before the jury, she documented everything. She reached out to friends, to her attorney, even to her therapist. Lena Hartley Ramsey did everything a victim is told to do except leave. Because she couldn't. Because she knew Jack Ramsey would never let her. Behind closed doors back at the precinct, Naomi Castell revisited one piece of evidence that had nagged at her since the beginning: a small USB drive found in Lena's desk drawer, labeled for later. It hadn't been analyzed yet. She handed it off to her tech lead, Officer Grayson. An hour later, he knocked on her door. "You're going to want to see this." The USB contained recordings, dozens of them. Lena had placed small voice-activated recorders throughout her home. Conversations with Jack, confrontations, late-night monologues. Each audio file added new weight to the case. In one, Jack could be heard shouting, "You think anyone's going to believe you? You're lucky I let you keep the kids. I could take them anytime I want." In another, quieter, more chilling exchange, Lena asked him, "Why are you keeping my key?" Jack responded, "Because I still live here, whether you like it or not." Naomi played the final recording 3 times. It was dated 3 days before Lena's murder. Jack whispered, "If you go through with this divorce, Lena, there won't be anything left to fight over." Patterns and predictions. Claire Mendoza brought in a domestic violence expert. During the second week of trial, Dr. Naya Cothry, a psychologist specializing in coercive control and emotional abuse. Dr. Cothry broke down the cycle of abuse: how victims often stay not because they're weak, but because they're cornered, psychologically manipulated, and stripped of autonomy. She explained how Jack's tactic, surveillance, intimidation, isolation, fit the textbook definition of coercive control. The physical violence, when it came, she said, was simply the final step in a long pattern of domination. She read passages from Lena's journal aloud. March 11, 2023. "He said I'm nothing without him. I told him I wanted peace. He said, 'You'll find peace when you're dead.' March 20th, 2023. The locks only work for so long. I caught him trying to copy my car key. The courtroom was silent. Even the defense attorney didn't object. The public turns initially, some in Willow Creek had struggled to reconcile Jack's image with the brutal truth. He'd been their neighbor, their friend, the guy who shoveled snow from elderly driveways without being asked. But as more came to light, public sentiment shifted. Local businesses took down photos of Jack with Little League teams. The community center canceled a scholarship in his name. Social media posts once filled with support were now threads of condemnation. Marcy took it upon herself to set up the Lena Hartley Foundation, a non-profit aimed at helping victims of domestic violence find legal, emotional, and financial support. Donations poured in. "We couldn't save Lena," Marcy said during the launch event, her voice thick with emotion, "but we can make sure we don't lose anyone else like her." The crossroads as the trial reached its final week. Jack requested to take the stand. His attorney advised against it, but Jack insisted. He believed he could convince the jury. He believed he was still in control. In his testimony, he cried. He spoke of a marriage that lost its way, of a wife who grew distant, of a justice system that wants a villain. But under cross-examination, Mendoza dismantled his facade. "You searched for how to make a silencer. I was curious. It doesn't prove intent. You created a burner phone, hid it, lied about it. I panicked. You told your son you were going out dressed like a ninja. That's a child's imagination. You told Lena she'd find peace when she was dead." Jack paused. His lips tightened. "That was taken out of context." Mendoza leaned forward. "What is the correct context for threatening your wife's life, Mr. Ramsey?" Jack had no answer. The courtroom held its breath. Judgment Day morning of the verdict felt like the first real breath of spring. But inside the courthouse, the air was still and heavy. Jurors filed in, their faces stone, unreadable. Jack Ramsey sat between his lawyers, his hands folded so tightly his knuckles turned white. He hadn't spoken in days. "Will the defendant please rise?" the judge said. Jack stood. The courtroom fell into a silence so thick it was as if the world itself were holding its breath. "We, the jury, find the defendant, Jack Ramsey, guilty on all counts." Gasps, a cry from the back. Jack didn't flinch, not even when Andrea collapsed into tears, covering her mouth with both hands. Not when Marcy clutched the edge of her pew as if to keep from falling. Not even when his youngest daughter, brought in quietly with a counselor to witness the moment, whispered, "Daddy." Jack simply lowered himself back into his seat, eyes forward. The judge called for order. The gavel came down. Sentencing was set for 1 month later. Outside, news cameras captured everything: the cheers, the embraces, the weight lifting off a town that had been suffocating beneath grief and disbelief. The sentencing hearing, impact statements poured in. Andrea, trembling, read hers first. "My sister deserved better. She deserved protection. She deserved to grow old with her children, to see them graduate, fall in love, live." Jack stole all of that. Marcy stepped forward, her voice unwavering. "She wasn't just a statistic. She was the strongest person I knew. And you, Jack, you tried to silence her. But her story's louder now than your lies ever were." Even young Ethan, under careful supervision, submitted a drawing. It showed Lena, in a field of flowers, holding hands with her children. Above her was a smiling son and the words, "Mommy is safe now." The judge spoke slowly. "Mr. Ramsey, you used charm to mask cruelty and love as a weapon. This court sentences you to life without the possibility of parole." Jack's face broke then. Just for a second, his lips parted, his eyes flickered, with something regret, perhaps, or recognition. But it was too late. Ashes and roots after the trial. Willow Creek began the long process of healing. The Lena Hartley Foundation gained traction beyond the town, raising hundreds of thousands in grants and donations. Marcy became its first executive director, traveling to speak about the warning signs of emotional abuse. Schools across the state began integrating emotional health awareness into curricula. Churches, community centers, and local governments started offering domestic violence training. Lena's name became a catalyst not for tragedy, But transformation. Andrea was granted custody of the children. She moved them to a nearby city where they could start fresh. The transition wasn't easy. There were nightmares, panic attacks, tears. But there was also love. Andrea made sure Lena's memory lived in joy. Birthday cakes baked from Lena's recipes. Stories told by candlelight about her compassion. Her laughter, her goofy dance moves in the kitchen. She used to say love was the loudest force in the universe. Andrea whispered one night to Ethan. And she wasn't wrong. The interview 1 year later. Claire Mendoza appeared on a true crime documentary revisiting the Ramsey case. She sat before the camera, hands clasped. We weren't just prosecuting a killer, she said. We were confronting a system that lets women fall through the cracks. Lena did everything right. She documented, she warned, she reached out, and still she died. She paused, then leaned in. But she also left us the tools to stop it from happening again. The legacy in the second anniversary of Lena's death. A statue was unveiled in Willow Creek's Central Park. It wasn't a somber memorial, but a celebration. A woman standing tall, arms open, surrounded by blooming flowers. At the base, a plaque read, in memory of Lena Hartley, a mother, a fighter, a light. May her story shield others from silence. Marcy stood beside Andrea and the children. There were tears, but there were also smiles. Strangers approached to say Lena's story had changed their lives, encouraged them to leave, to speak up, to demand safety. Ethan, now 12, stepped up to the microphone. My mom used to say heroes don't wear capes, they just love really hard. The crowd applauded. She loved us really hard. And now we're going to make sure she's never forgotten. The breeze rustled through the trees. Somewhere, a bell tolled noon. And in that moment, Lena Hartle,